There is global outrage, yet again, over Israeli military action in Gaza. According to the Gazan Health Ministry, at least 45 people have been killed, including 23 women, children and elderly in an Israeli airstrike on a camp for displaced Palestinians in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Over 200 others have been wounded. Graphic footage shows chilling scenes from the scene in the Tal al-Sultan area on Sunday night when a large explosion occurred, followed by intense fires. The Israel Defense Forces, or IDF, says it killed 2 senior Hamas officials and it is reviewing reports that civilians may have been harmed. In a speech today, the IDF's Advocate General described the incident in Rafah as very difficult and said it regrets any harm to uninvolved civilians during the war. Hours earlier, Hamas had fired 8 rockets from Rafah towards Tel Aviv, the first long-range attacks on the central Israeli city since January. The rockets were mostly intercepted by Israeli air defense systems or fell in the fields. These incidents came 2 days after the International Court of Justice ordered Israel to immediately halt its military offensive in Rafah, where hundreds of thousands of people are believed to be sheltering. The Palestinian Red Crescent has said Sunday's airstrike targeted tents for displaced people near a UN facility. Disturbing footage shows a number of structures on fire next to a banner saying Kuwaiti Peace Camp, and first responders and bystanders carrying several bodies, some of which were charred. A senior official in Gaza's Hamas-run civil defense agency said the agency's rescue workers had seen charred bodies and dismembered limbs and cases of amputations, wounded children, women and the elderly. Visuals show charred bodies being pulled from the rubble, a man holding the headless body of a child, fire raging from tents in the background. Doctors Without Borders has said, "We are horrified by this deadly event, which shows once again that nowhere is safe in Gaza. We continue to call for an immediate and sustained ceasefire." The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, the largest humanitarian organization in Gaza, has described the situation as horrifying and said it was not able to establish full communication with its team on the ground in Rafah. The agency wrote on the social media, "Gaza is hell on earth." Images from last night are yet another testament to that. The head of the Hamas-run government media office has said the camp, which was attacked was away from recent military action and actually in a designated safe zone, to which the IDF itself had told civilians in eastern Rafah to flee. About 1.5 million people had been taking refuge in Rafah before 6th May, when Israel began what it called targeted ground operations in eastern areas of the city to destroy the last remaining Hamas battalions. The UN estimates that more than 800,000 people have fled in response to orders from the IDF. At least 36,000 people have been killed in Gaza since the beginning of the war over 7 months ago, according to the Hamas-run Health Ministry. Following the latest Rafah deaths, several countries have called on Israel to abide by the ruling of the International Court of Justice ordering it to immediately halt its military offensive in Rafah. Many of Israel's allies have responded with horror to the scenes from Rafah. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, has said Israel is continuing the military action that it has been asked to stop. Borrell also said that Israel accusing the International Criminal Court of anti-Semitism is completely unacceptable. This after its chief prosecutor requested that arrest warrants be issued against Israel's top leaders as well as Hamas leaders. French President Emmanuel Macron has expressed outrage over the Rafah airstrikes as well. He said these operations must stop. There are no safe areas in Rafah for Palestinian civilians. I call for full respect for international law and an immediate ceasefire. France is one of those countries which had earlier backed the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But Israel simply doesn't seem to care. In fact, after Spain joined Norway and Ireland in announcing that it would recognize a Palestinian state, Israel has sent a diplomatic note to Spain prohibiting its consulate in Jerusalem from providing consular services such as issuing visas to Palestinian residents in the occupied West Bank. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said his country will do everything in its power to hold Israeli officials accountable. He added, and I quote, "As Turkey, we will do everything in our power to hold these killers who do not have a shred of humanity accountable." Erdogan said the strike on Rafah is a massacre which took place after the International Court of Justice's call to halt the attacks. He called Israel a terrorist state. As Netanyahu and his murder network failed to break the heroic resistance of the Palestinian people, they are becoming increasingly backed into a corner in their own country, trying to extend their political life by spilling more blood. But they will soon see that this doesn't do any good, Erdogan added. Meanwhile, German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock has said the order by the International Court of Justice asking Israel to halt its military operation in the southern Gaza city of Rafah is binding and has to be followed. We are currently experiencing the opposite. International law, international humanitarian law applies to everyone, including Israeli warfare, she said. The call from Germany, one of Israel's foremost allies, represents the growing diplomatic pressure on Israel to rein in its military offensive in Gaza. But again, the million-dollar question still remains. Is anything going to change as far as Israel's strategy is concerned?